Coming up, Donald Trump has abandoned Europe. And he's abandoned liberal democracy. He's sided with Vladimir Putin, parroting Kremlin propaganda and spewing fake news about Ukraine being to blame for being invaded by Russia, that Vlodomir Zelensky's approval rating is in single figures, whereas in fact it's 52%, higher than Trump's own approval rating, and that the democratically elected Zelensky is a dictator. But worse than that, some on the British right, Badenoch's Conservative Party for example, and Reform UK, they're cheering on Putin's apologist Trump and his MAGA movement. They're acting against their own country's interests. It's a betrayal of liberal democracy. Stay tuned. For decades, British politicians have convinced themselves that the UK had a special relationship with the USA based on a common language and common values. I'm not sure that this was ever true, but at least previous US presidents have gone along with the conceit. I think the relationship was special only to the extent that it ever served American interests. At least Trump has made that fact obvious. Trump is no friend to Europe. Everything he's said and done since returning to office has made it abundantly clear that he doesn't give a toss about Europe at all. He's called NATO obsolete. He's threatened to pull the US out of the alliance completely. He said that he wouldn't feel obliged to uphold the NATO pledge to come to the defence of another NATO member unless they were spending at least 2% of their GDP on defence. In fact, Trump says he would encourage Russia to do whatever the hell they want to any NATO country that doesn't pay enough. He openly admires and compliments authoritarian strongmen like Putin, Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping, while trashing democratic leaders like Justin Trudeau and Emmanuel Macron. But it's his stance on Ukraine that's the most damning. Trump has repeatedly sided with Putin, calling Zelensky, a democratically elected leader fighting for his country's survival, a dictator. He suggested that Ukraine should just give up territory to Russia. He even claimed this week, absurdly, that it was Ukraine that started the war. And he's hinted that he'd let Putin do whatever he wants if it meant he could strike a deal. Zelensky has now said that Trump had been caught in a web of disinformation from Russia over the war in Ukraine. And it's true. Trump is echoing Kremlin talking points, undermining Ukraine's resistance and emboldening one of the most murderous regimes on the planet. And yet somehow there are people in Britain, people in positions of power and influence, who still think Trump is the answer, who still believe that this man, this serial liar and authoritarian sympathiser, is somehow the saviour of Western values. A phrase which in the 21st century has been code for Islamophobia, but whose definition has now apparently expanded to mean ethnic cleansing in Palestine and the appeasement of Putin's Russia. Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Kemi Badenoch, Robert Jenrick, these are just a few of the prominent figures on the British right who've either openly supported Trump or refused to condemn his dangerous rhetoric. Johnson, the man who once posed as a champion of Ukraine, now claims that Trump's statements are not intended to be historically accurate, but to shock Europeans into action, posting this on President Musk's ex-Twitter platform. Really, Boris Johnson, is that what you reckon? Because to the rest of us, the vast majority of the UK electorate, it looks like Trump is just doing Putin's dirty work. Whatever the hell Putin has on Trump, it must be a hell of a lot more than just the so-called P tapes. But it's not just our disgraced former Tory Prime Minister who says it. Kemi Badenoch, the current leader of the Conservative Party, is going even further. In a speech after the US elections, she delighted in Trump's return to power, suggesting he'd come back older, wiser and better placed to achieve his objectives. Older? The guy shows multiple symptoms of cognitive decline. Wiser? Hardly. Better placed to achieve his objectives? Sure, he's clearly learned how to operate the levers of American power this time round, and his objectives include dismantling NATO, abandoning Ukraine, and cozying up to Putin. Can I just take a moment to ask you to leave a comment below once you've watched this video, and to give this video a like, share a link with your friends, and make sure you're subscribed. You can now join as a member of the Truth to Power community if you wish, which comes with various levels of benefits such as priority responses to your comments and early access to my weekly videos. Anyone joining as a member in order to gain early access to my videos should click on the subscribe button and then activate notifications by clicking on the bell icon. I'll leave a link below for further information on membership, but if membership isn't for you, that's absolutely fine, nothing changes. This isn't about me making money, it's more about keeping YouTube and its algorithms happy and giving you a chance to get more involved. That said, it does help to cover my costs in producing these videos, and a big thank you to those who have already joined. But talking of making money, for Johnson and Truss, sucking up to Trump is a career move, a way to cash in on the lucrative American market for disgraced right-wing politicians. For others, like Farage, it's about riding the MAGA wave, hoping to tap into the same online ecosystem that rewards Trump sycophants with clicks, likes and dollars. Right-wing publications like The Spectator and The Daily Telegraph have jumped on the bandwagon, peddling MAGA-adjacent nonsense to an American audience. Because, apparently, selling out your principles is worth it if it means expanding your subscriber base into the USA. But here's the thing, with most of the UK population holding a negative view of Trump, supporting Trump is politically foolish as well as being morally bankrupt. This is a man who incited an insurrection, who admires brutal dictators, who lies constantly without shame or consequence. And yet, instead of standing up to him, too many on the British right are bending the knee. Why? Because Trump hates and upsets the very same people that they do. Muslims, trans people, the disabled, people from places that Trump has branded as shithole countries. They think the Trump brand, his anti-woke agenda, his performative cruelty, they think that aligns with their own. These British right-wingers don't seem to give a toss that Trump doesn't care about Britain, that he doesn't care about Europe or NATO, that he doesn't even care about democracy. He cares only about one thing: himself. He's a psychopath and a stereotypical narcissist. And by aligning themselves with him, the British right isn't just betraying their country, they're betraying the very values they claim to uphold. Ukraine is a case in point. Supporting a democratic, sovereign nation fighting for its survival against a brutal aggressor is the right thing to do. But Trump doesn't see it that way, and neither, it seems, do his British enablers. But this isn't just about Trump, it's about what he represents. It's about the rise of authoritarianism, the erosion of democratic norms, and the growing global influence of disinformation and propaganda. And the Make Britain Great Again, the MBGA section of the British right, are complicit. But they're a small minority in the UK. Most of us in this country reject the lies, the hatred, the treachery and the moral cowardice that Trump represents. Well, Kemi Badenoch takes a leaf out of Trump's populist playbook, moving the Conservative Party ever further to the right to align with Trump's worldview. Keir Starmer's approach, by contrast, timid as it may be, appears to be more aligned with the interests of the UK. Sure, by avoiding direct confrontation with Trump and emphasising the importance of stability and calm reaction, Starmer is right on brand with his rather dull and uninspired approach to politics. But he is at least reminding Trump of democratic principles. He's been vociferous in his continued support of Zelensky and Ukraine, and yet still manages, thus far at least, to stay in the good books of Trump. Starmer has disappointed on so many things since becoming Prime Minister. Palestine, the two-child benefit cap, winter fuel allowances and so on. But I think in his approach to Trump, Starmer is getting it about right, positioning himself as a responsible leader who, unlike Badenoch and Farage, is not succumbing to the divisiveness of Trump's populism, where the tyranny of the majority tramples on the rights of minorities. Maybe our underwhelming Prime Minister can succeed in walking this tightrope, retaining Trump's goodwill on the one hand, while standing up to his worst excesses and prioritising the best interests of the UK. That's something that neither Badenoch nor Farage appear willing to even attempt.